Hello, I'm Jesse McAnally.
And I'm Andrew DeWolf.
And welcome to Musicals with Cheese, a podcast where I try to get Andrew to like musical theater week by week and show by show. How are you doing today, Andrew?
Well, I'm feeling motivated, you know?
Oh, really?
I'm thinking about trying to bring an artist back to life to kind of change the world a little bit, you know?
Okay, which artist?
I'm thinking Edgar Allan Poe, you know? He feels like a salty sailor.
I'd do that just to find out how he died.
I don't know. Who would you bring back?
You know what? I think I'd bring back Andy Kaufman just so he can start. He would do great things with YouTube, is all I'm saying.
He really would, and honestly, he'd probably get assassinated by the CIA or something.
He'd somehow find FBI secrets,
and he would release them in the most deadpan way imaginable as a joke.
What a tangent we went on. You know what, Andrew? There is something I do have to say before we get started properly.
Yeah?
Gods of the podcast, smile on us. You who sit up there stern in judgment, smile on us. Those who look down on podcasts, and who doesn't, will ask this little podcast and please smile on us. We offer you talk and dance. We offer you rights and revels. We offer you grace and beauty. Smile on us for this while.
That was pretty good.
This show has a lot of faults. I really like the opening. On this note, this week we are talking about Stephen Sondheim's least popular show, perhaps, The Frogs.
We're the frogs, the adorable frogs. Not your hoity-toity intellectuals, not your hippie-dippy homosexuals, just your easygoing, simple, warm-hearted, cold-blooded frogs of the pond. And the frogs we never go beyond. When you rearrange a single frond, we respond with a wax ribbit,
Oh, Zeus! Mighty and powerful Zeus, dear father of mine, help me! Help! The Frogs is a musical written by Bert Shrevlov and Nathan Lane with the 2004 revisions, with music and lyrics by the one and only Stephen Sondheim. It is based on The Frogs by Aristophanes, and The Frogs was performed for the first time at the Yale Repertory Theater in the Yale swimming pool in May 20th of 1974 for around 8 performances. But get this, the ensemble included Yale students Meryl Streep, Sigourney Weaver, and Christopher Durang, all dressed as frogs swimming around in this pool. Like, I don't know why that's so wild to me, but it is. But shortly after performing a concert adaptation in 2001, Nathan Lane wanted to revise and expand the show into a 2-act musical instead of the 90-minute show it was in the Yale swimming pool. He expanded the first act and condensed the second act a little bit, and he explained what drew him to expand the Frogs, and guess what it was? It was September 11th. Nathan Lane was quoted saying, "After September 11th, I started to think, there's something in this piece right now. There's something idealistic about the notion of someone believing that the arts can make a difference. I found it moving. In light of what was going on in the world, it was great." This new book included direct references to George W. Bush and the Iraq War. It was labeled as even more freely adapted by Nathan Lane, and it opened on July 22nd, 2004 on Broadway. Lane played Dionysus, and Roger Bart was Xanthias, I believe it is. He brought on also his director from the producers, Susan Stroman, who also choreographed it. It opened to mixed critical reception. Most complained that Lane's new plot was even looser, while others noted that the mix of lowbrow and highbrow comedy really seemed at odds, although others noted that this was what Aristophanes did in the original The Frogs. It closed on October 10th, 2004 after 92 performances. It did not get any Tony Awards, but it was nominated for 3 Drama League Awards. Now, the plot of The Frogs is Stephen Sondheim and Bert Shrevlov's musical retelling of Aristophanes' satire in which Greek god Dionysus seeks to inspire better efforts from current playwrights. It premiered at Yale University in 1974. The Broadway production features additional songs by Sondheim and a revised book by Nathan Lane. So there's that. So, all this being said, we have talked about the frogs probably since our first 10 episodes. This has been long coming.
It has everything that I like, which is frogs and Dionysus.
So, running gag, Andrew will just randomly send me pictures of frogs throughout the day. Not as often anymore, but early on in this podcast, he would just kind of do that a lot. And he was probably the most excited to talk about this musical out of all the other ones. And he had convinced himself that it's just cats with frogs. And he wasn't entirely wrong, but...
It's not, but it sort of is.
What did you think of the frogs?
So the frogs is not at all what I was expecting. To be honest, I thought it was going to be more in line with a lot of Sondheim's other work, where it's more highbrow.
Yeah.
But honestly, this was like a lowbrow comedy. Though I did watch the revival, which maybe is different. But I did enjoy it anyways. So
Sondheim has worked with this book writer once before, and that was on a comedy and the first musical that Sondheim wrote both music and lyrics for, called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And this is very, very much connected in both tone and vibe with that, which is another very same lowbrow comedy vibe. And this is his only ever real big dip into that pool, no pun intended. And I thought that's good, but this is like if Forum had something to actually say about the world. So I think I like this better.
Yeah, it actually has a sort of uplifting message where it's trying to say that art can change things, or trying to, maybe it doesn't directly say that art can change things, but it's trying to inspire people to believe that it can.
Okay, can you please try to break down the plot of the frogs, if you could?
Yeah. It's relatively simple, though it's a little bit kind of all over the place.
Yes, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, but the main points of it is Dionysus is not happy with the current state of drama, and he is the god of drama and wine. He's perfectly happy with the current state of wine, it seems, but not the state of drama.
A little wine can get you a lot of drama.
So he wants to bring back. I'm not going to remember this guy's name. What was the? It was a playwright from the
George
1900s. George Shaw. Yeah.
How do you forget that? He wrote Pygmalion, and then they were like, well, Pygmalion, My Fair Lady, let's make 1,000 My Fair Lady references.
I am not good with names.
All right.
I remember that he wrote My Fair Lady because they did bring that up a shit ton of times.
No, he wrote Pygmalion, and then other people wrote My Fair Lady. The fact that they equated just a pander to there's a lot of things little things that bother me.
There's a whole bunch of jokes that I didn't get because I'm only in for the lowbrow humor.
Yeah.
Regardless, he wants to bring back Shaw, so he has to go to the underworld. He disguises himself as Heracles, for reasons I can't remember. I guess it would be easier to get into the underworld as Heracles. Mm-hmm. Travels there, he does the whole Hadestown thing, and when he gets there, for whatever reason, Shaw and Shakespeare are now both up for it. Like maybe one of them is going to have to go, and they have to compete.
Literary competition. And this is a reference to while George Bernard Shaw was alive, he was one of Shakespeare's biggest critics so far as to rewrite Shakespeare's work more often than not. Specifically, the play that Shakespeare quotes from, George Bernard Shaw rewrote while alive and was a very vocal critic of.
So they literally battle it out, and Shakespeare ends up winning. And the titular frogs basically exists as they're just a thing that exists that's going to try to turn other people into frogs, and they attack Dionysus, I think, only one time, maybe two. I can't remember if they come back. I believe it's only once at the end of Act 1.
Once, and then they're referenced quite a bit throughout.
They are referenced before they show up and after. And yeah, that's what happens. He leaves the underworld with Shakespeare, and then he actually directly addresses the audience.
Well, so I believe a lot of musicals, especially Sondheim's musicals, have a message that they like to impart at the end. Like Into the Woods, careful the things you say, children will listen. This one, it's saying, quit sitting on your ass and make something that matters.
Yes, and the song is literally titled "Final Instructions to the Audience."
We start with instructions to the audience, though, as I famously sang at the beginning of this episode, where they give a list of do's and don'ts, but mostly don'ts while at the show. And then they contradict it at the end saying, no, engage with your art. Don't sit back and enjoy it. You have to respond and critique it and be a part of it, or else it means nothing. Don't just go for entertainment. Go for something that stimulates you.
Or else you're going to end up being like one of those people that goes to see DC movies by Zack Snyder and they just sit there and it washes over them.
By this show's own definition, a frog. Someone that is apathetic and trying to drag you down with it, both in art and as far as society goes, societal change. The frogs are representing complacent, useless things in the world of this. I think frogs are fine in real life, that are just trying to drag others to their level so there's more of them.
Is it part of the joke that they kind of are like the cats from Cats?
A little bit. They look like that. They didn't look like that in the 70s production.
But like Cats didn't exist when the 70s production came out. Are they mocking them?
Yes.
Because I think they are. I think that they're trying to say that Cats is meaningless art that you can't even engage with.
I think that is subtext, but not in the text. I think that might be something Susan Stroman and Nathan Lane might have opinions on, but
that's what I picked up from it.
It was certainly, I could see the implication. So
they literally make jokes about how they're too big to be frogs. This doesn't make sense. They're like people.
I can see the reference, but I'm not going to say it's there.
I already said it for you. It's okay.
So let me talk about the 70s production for a minute. So there's a really garbage audio recording of the 70s production. And even if you were there in person, apparently it sounded terrible. Stephen Sondheim was quoted as saying it sounds as the sound quality was equivalent of a men's urinal.
This was the one where they performed in a pool,
They
right?
performed in the Yale swimming pool, yes.
Do people know what water does to acoustics?
Doesn't help.
It's not very good. It's not good for acoustics.
I do want to say, it's a tight 90 minutes. We meet Heracles at 10 minutes in. We are at the point where the frogs take control at 22 minutes, and then the rest of Act 2 is the rest of the show. It is a succinct, poignant piece that really works. I don't know if it should have been done in a swimming pool, but I really, really engaged with that one and all the pieces.
You don't know if it should have been. It should not have been done in a swimming pool. I'm going to say that.
I don't think it was a good idea.
It is funny that the frogs literally swim in the pool.
I think it's a very funny image. I showed you some pictures of it. Like, just generally, it looked hilarious. And the audience at that Yale 8 performance thing were laughing so loud that it's reverberating off the walls, and the jokes about them being in a pool really land. But there wasn't many modern references that I could pick up. There was no of that. The general stuff, like jokes about no shit and like what an ass and stuff like that. That stuff's in there.
You realize that after 2001, every single piece of media for the next 10 years had to reference 9/11 in some way, right? There had to be a joke about George Bush. There had to be, God, there were so many jokes about George Bush. I feel like George Bush got made fun of more than Trump did.
I don't know. I feel like Trump media is also going to be really cringy in about 3 years. It's already kind of cringy now.
3 years, it's already cringy.
But going from that to the 2-hour Nathan Lane revised Broadway show, I can see why this show doesn't get the best name. It is a very overlong first act, but when it gets to the point, where it gets to the pathos, where it gets to the message of Act 2, it really worked for me. I do not know if Susan Stroman was the correct person because she's a very tits and teeth kind of director that really works well for the producers or the Music Man. Doesn't work that great for what this is until we get to Act 2, where we have George Bernard Shaw and William Shakespeare going head to head in like rap battles, Hamilton style, and it's pretty great. And the big kind of takes are really good.
Act 2 is absolutely where it picks up.
Yes.
Act 1 feels like it's basically just like a comedy hour.
Yeah.
They just have, they keep doing jokes. Some of the jokes are good. Some of the jokes aren't. A lot of them are kind of dated. There was some stuff that did make me laugh, so it wasn't like a total waste, but it definitely gets a lot better in Act 2.
Yeah, I thought I hated this show because I mostly engaged with Act 1, and then Act 2 kind of washed over me. For years, I thought I didn't like this show. I think I really like this show. It just needs to be 90 minutes.
I think that this show could be great, and honestly, do another rewrite to fit more with what modern politics are and everything, and I think this could be a perfectly relevant show to put on right now.
I think this, sincerely, I think the message of the show has only gotten more important over the last 20 years. I think the frogs represent general apathy of the world. I think I said this a little bit earlier, where you have this group of individuals that are basically identical and trying to keep their heads down in the water, away from anyone else, and just trying to make more of them so that there's bigger apathy, more and more apathy, sitting back, not thinking. People that want to see things, as far as Broadway is concerned, people that want to see the Cats or the Andrew Lloyd Webber shit.
You were talking about it in a more political sense, though, as well.
That too. People that sit back and aren't engaging in the world around them or the change they want to see around them, because it is easier to hide away and not engage with the crowds and drama, so to say. People that don't want to really be changing the world and would rather sit and be a conglomerated nothing, be apathetic. And I think that's just what the frogs represent, is general apathy. And the message at the end where it's like, please do something. I don't care what you do, but do something, is super poignant right now.
I wonder if this wasn't as well received because I think in 2004, a lot of people probably were the frogs in a way. 9/11 kind of fucked politics in America for, let's see, how many years has it been? 22 years. We're still going. But like, did people want to hear that then, when a lot of them were just kind of the gung-ho war good, don't think America good types?
There's a specific line in the final message, which the final song is basically stating the thesis of the show, what you were just watching, and it's taken right from Aristophanes, the original frogs, paraphrased. But Dionysus says, I know that this sounds a little crass, but citizens of Athens, if you're smart, don't sit around while Athens falls apart, which I think represents everything that the show is trying to say. The original line from Aristophanes tells the audience to follow the politicians who will save Athens. The city was involved in the Peloponnesian War and had put on trial many of the generals from their last naval victory. Athens lost the war the year after Aristophanes' play was first performed. The use of Athens rather than replacing it in the city maintains the consistency of the show's opening. Basically, it's using comedy to try to convince you to stand up for something, or else we're all gonna burn down with it. It's
sad because 20 something years later at this point, I mean, it will be 20 years in next year. We failed. I think the message of the show did not spread in any real way.
No.
And things have only gotten worse.
No. And it has, as far as apathy goes, you can't bring up anything, and literally any problem going on, a literal murder of a child is a political statement nowadays. Because whether or not you disclose whether they're full existence.
Are you pro or anti the murder of the child?
Exactly. Why does the fact that the child was trans matter? Yeah, it matters because it was a politically charged murder, you fucking idiot.
But like, what if they deserved it? Like, did you think about that?
Did you ever think that the right person died, so I shouldn't feel bad?
God damn, that is literally politics now, isn't it?
It is. And I this show specifically brings on criticism. In the final words, it says something that also hit with me. We can be booed, please. It shows that you're awake. Which is a good thing to say. Like, yes, engage with us. Say that we're stupid because it shows that you are paying attention. And I think that that's a lot of people these days.
It's not just that. It's art as well. People don't engage with art in any way.
No.
I think media literacy is at maybe not an all-time low. That's exaggeratory.
No,
Everyone
I think
probably
it's
says that.
No, I think it's at a
it's pretty bad.
Low. Look, like we bring up Doug Walker a lot, who apparently is your favorite person because people don't understand sarcasm on a podcast, but
we're making fun of him. We don't like Doug Walker.
Fuck Doug Walker. But he, CinemaSins, and a lot of other people have basically destroyed media literacy and engaging with artistic choices.
I have something to say on that. I don't think that that's correct. I think it's the other way around. I think that Doug Walker and CinemaSins and all of this are representative of what the people want to see because they don't have media literacy, so they don't give a shit to see real critics. They want to see just people asking what would happen if Batman met Mario.
Exactly. The world we're living in, that is the only part of any kind of media that people are engaging with. What if The Flash met Batman? Who's going to be in the next Marvel? Is Paul Rudd going to be in the next Marvel? It's a disheartening, horrendous world we're living in right now. And let's take a look at Broadway right now. Tootsie the musical. We've got Bad Cinderella. It's the homogenization where they're asking you to not pay attention to Broadway, and then things like A Strange Loop, while critically lauded, closes after a very short run.
Which A Strange Loop was probably the best thing on Broadway for the entire last season, for sure.
Say within the last 10 years.
It was incredible. And if you haven't seen A Strange Loop, like, come on, you are missing out big time. That was so good.
And as far as Sondheim revivals go, I love Sondheim. I think what he says in a lot of his work is important. As far as the important ones go, I think that Merrily We Roll Along and Into the Woods and Sweeney Todd, while all great works, all deserving of other things, has a lot less to say about our society today than some of his lesser known shows like The Frogs or even Passion.
It is funny that we're having this conversation with The Frogs of all things, because
I know
this is such a lowbrow comedy in a lot of ways.
But the message means so much.
And it honestly, I think it helps it because when you deliver a message like this in a lowbrow comedy, it can reach the people that needs to like actually see it. If this was in some highbrow snooty thing where I fall asleep halfway through, like, I'm not even going to pick up on it.
And that seemed to be Sondheim's trick through a lot of his work, at least post Sunday in the Park with George, because Sunday in the Park with George is probably his most artsy-fartsy one with the message that probably means the most to him. But then you've got things like Into the Woods, which is a very gaudy like comedy for most of it, and then it goes into like how we treat our children and what stories we give down to them, and like then it becomes an important message. As well as Assassins, which is very goofy throughout, but it has something to say.
So I think it's fair to say that we did enjoy The Frogs on
yes.
at least some level. And I think from what I've heard, and maybe this was your opinion,
yeah,
do people not like this show?
Most people don't. This is like on any Sondheim ranking list, literally.
It's always like the bottom.
Google one. Just Google Sondheim shows ranked. Tell me where it lands.
Sure. The best Sondheim musicals ranked by fans. Let's see, company number 1. Scroll down.
Command F. Just take us to the
Oh my God. The Frogs is number 19 with one below it, Saturday Night.
Oh, Saturday Night. Saturday Night was the first show he ever wrote when he was like a kid.
I don't even see Bounce. There might be another page.
Bounce, I think, is Saturday Night.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I think they're the same show.
So literally that means Frogs, they think, is the second worst. Okay, it's Roadshow?
Roadshow and Bounce are the same show.
Roadshow is 18. Roadshow is above Frogs.
Somehow. How did that happen? The Frogs never had to get renamed. Let me just say that one.
So people think that this is apparently just a horrendous show.
Yeah.
This ranking list puts Evening Primrose above.
I think that shows a good vibe of how most people interpret the Frog. Maybe it's because it expects a lot of folks, and I will give credit, it does. But I don't know. Like, I feel like the ones that are a little bit more hard to swallow are the medicines that you need to take.
Now, on some level, I can understand why the show would get hate, though.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff where it's just very, like, silly comedy. Like, that's not going to go over well with everybody.
No.
Especially not some Sondheim fans who, like, this is, like, the opposite of what he usually does.
But, like, let's think about where this happened in his career, in both terms. So... This started in the 70s. At that time, I don't even think he did Sweeney Todd yet. I think he was still working with Hal Prince when he did The Frogs. So this was right after his first really big success in a long time, A Little Night Music. This was when he was getting fucking experimental. So this is right after Night Music and right before Pacific Overtures. Like, this is the thing. And he's re-collaborating with the guy that he did his first musical with. The first thing, like, that he did the score and lyrics for. It, like, hey, let's go home. And then he drops it for 30 years. And Nathan Lane says, let's do it again. And at this point, the last show he had done, like, professionally was Passion 10 years before. And he would not do another proper Broadway show ever again. Like, he would not write a new show. So he's returning, writing 9 new songs for this with 30 years distance from his original premise of doing it. I think that has a lot to do with where his mindset is, as well as just a new book writer in Nathan Lane revising it with him, which is just going to bring a different thing, different vibe.
Apparently there was a revival of this in 2017 in London.
I wonder how that was received. I'd be interested to see how that one did, because I feel like Londoners would actually really engage with this, because it's Shakespeare and George Bernard Shaw.
It's right up their alley, too. They love the goofy shit.
They love the goofy shit, but they also love things about Shakespeare. How about we compare our opinions to those of the theater critics, both in the 70s and in 2004, to see how we thought and compared to how they thought. It's time for previews!
It's time for previews. It's time for previews.
So this is from May 22nd, 1974 in the New York Times, New Haven, and Mel Gussow. He wrote, as a theatrical event, the Yale Repository Theater production of The Frogs is spectacular. It opened last night in, out of all places, the Yale swimming pool inside the Payne Whitney Gymnasium, which looks like an Olympic ocean next to the Yale Rep's usual church mouse of a home. On and off the pool, there was a cast of 68, including 21 Frogman chorus, and some of the steeply inclined seats, 1,600 of them, are reserved for the audience. Sit members of the Yale University Band. In ambition, this cross-country collaboration between Aristophanes and Bert Shevelove is breathtaking. Mr. Shevelove's adaptation, he is also the director, is faithful to the spirit of Aristophanes while taking outrageous liberties with his text. Dionysus still journeys to Hades to bring back a poet from the dead to stimulate the living. But the key to Mr. Shevelove's healthy disrespect is the statement inserted into the program. The time is the present. The place is ancient Greece. The jokes, funny and ribald, are by Mr. Shevelove, the music by his forum partner, Stephen Sondheim. There are 6 musical numbers, stretches of songs between words ranging between the effervescent Pardodos, the score for sensational water ballet, Parabasis, which simply marks time. Another week of effort from Mr. Sondheim, and the show might have been a full score it deserves. Let's put a pin in that one. The major shift in the play is that the verbal battle in Hades between Euripides and Aeschylus now takes place between George Bernard Shaw, and William Shakespeare. This gives Sheevlove the chance to mock a gallery of dead authors from Beaumont and Fletcher to Brecht. When Shakespeare beats Shaw and is about to leave Hades with Dionysus, Pluto bargains, take Shaw, and I'll throw in Ibsen. That shows you the kind of jokes that they were pulling in the 70s version. The literary sparring match was a comic apex in the original. For this Frogs, Michael Feingold has cold quotes from Shaw and Shakespeare, and the result is, unfortunately, a dead spot in the show, proving that at least in this case, Shaw and Shakespeare cannot compete with Sheevlove. But most of Frog's 90 minutes without an intermission is good, unadulterated fun. Larry Blyden is a splendid, mock-confident Dionysus. He crosses the Styx as if it were the Delaware, and he a togaed Washington, while Frogs dip and flip like extras in a splashy MGM epic. Now, I think that just sums up like maybe you just had to be there kind of vibe of that show. I actually really liked what Sondheim was doing with the score. It was very choir based and choral based rather than like proper like ballad numbers. So I don't really agree with that there. But he saw the potential in this and had a good time. But the things that he didn't like are the things that I like the most.
It seems like a lot of the stuff he didn't like though gets changed because there's more songs in the revival. In 2004, so like a lot of that kind of thing is addressed, which maybe they took this into account, this sort of review.
Maybe, but I feel like they might have overcorrected. But let's go into the time machine into the future to July 23rd, 2004, with New York Times chief theater critic Ben Brantley reviewing.
Oh God, let me guess. This is a uber negative review.
Let's just hear the first sentence really quick.
All right. New York Times, Ben Brantley, July 23rd, 2004. Even the creme de la creme can curdle every now and then. Consider The Frogs, which opened last night at the Vivian Beaumont Theater as part of the Lincoln Center Festival. This musical updating of the 1974 adaptation of Aristophanes' 2,400-year-old comedy of gods and playwrights has the highest concentration of blue ribbon talent of any show now on Broadway. Okay.
Which is basically him saying, it's got a lot of people in it, but too bad it sucks.
Yeah. After dwelling with such craven procrastination on the fine ingredients that make up The Frogs, I am forced to concede that what should have been a zesty, airy souffle is a soggy, lumpy batter that never shows the slightest signs of rising. Staged in 1974 as a publicity-garnering hour-long novelty by the Yale School of Drama, around and in the university gymnasium swimming pool, if you please, this bauble of a show has been reshaped to fill 2.5 hours. The result suggests that to stretch something this slight is to shatter it. So, I mean, on some level, he's right here.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't have been made longer. Although 2.5 hours, the one I saw was only 2 hours. Did they shorten it?
Intermission.
Oh, intermission? Ben Brantley, you don't count intermission as part of the show. Jesus Christ. He's just adding that in there to make it seem like it's even longer. I've actually watched shows that are 2.5 hours.
We've watched We Will Rock You, 3 hours of garbage.
Yeah, what was that, a 3.5 hour show? Because intermission? Haha.
Yeah, it was. Basically, that sums up his opinion of it, and that has basically been the consensus opinion of the Frogs, including myself, who I thought I didn't like this show for a very long time. I had gaslit myself into thinking I didn't like this show for a very long time, but I had just saw it on surface level, so I feel you, Ben Brantley, but also quit being an asshole.
Yeah, I think there's definitely criticisms to have of the Frogs, and I think the main ones that I have are some of the jokes are just super dated. It's a little overlong, but honestly, I think overall I could see a updated version of this being very funny and very good.
Sincerely, if they announce tomorrow that like someone like, oh god, the Moulin Rouge director guy, Alex Timbers, was doing the show with Josh Gad as the lead, I'd be like, yeah, fine, do it. Know what? Reunite Josh Gad and Andrew Rannells as the two leads. I'm in.
Oh my god, that'd actually be hilarious.
Like that, we have our it would be like the two comedy greats.
It's even a similar vibe to Book of Mormon.
Exactly.
Like their relationship. Oh, that would actually be really good.
and really just focus on the message and don't lose the message. Still be funny. Like, obviously with that casting, be funny, embrace the humor, but focus on the message. Keep it a tight 90. Put it at the circle and the square and make it a tight 90. Get people out. No intermission.
And add a swimming pool. Musicals with Cheese presents The Frogs.
The Musicals with Cheese Theater presents The Frogs, starring Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad. We'll go bankrupt faster than Rebecca.
Ben Brantley will come out of retirement just to write the fucking review.
I will invite him. I will sit next to him. I will give him the hand job while he's writing his review. He will have a good night.
Jess McAnally was really working the shit.
He ignored the balls more, but somehow he happened to know that I didn't like much ball work.
Oh my god. Okay, mid-show time.
Mid-show time. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt you in the middle of the show, but we've got a shill at you. Today's show is brought to you by the extremely kind donations by our donors over at Patreon. Patreon's this beautiful place where you can give us money and you get perks. Sometimes, if Andrew will get off his ass.
Excuse me, I gave you a time and you didn't show up.
Yeah. That's my bad. What are you doing tomorrow?
Depends what time, but probably good.
What about noon?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll get you things this week, promise. But Patreon's great. Come join us there. Our current patrons are Melissa Goldman, Danielle Rennick, Justin Stampede, and Cassidy, Monica Thoreau, Mina Maniri, Brent Black, Nathaniel Stacey Coombe, Joseph Evans Green, Mary Lou Choquette, John Vanals, Ross Walker, Musical Hell, Kyle Summers, Jen A.C., Scoot and the Technicolor Dream Code, Liz Lim, Nothing is Certain Except Beth and Taxes, Thespian, Ren Cullen, Raphael, Martina Salaz, Jessica T, Mitchell Young, Chai Teacup, Katie McDonough, Chris Barco, Kiji Marie Anastasio, Trevi Joseph, Layla, RJ Narija, Charlie B, Bjorn Hermans, Erica S, Toriana Frazier, Sammy the Most Lopez, Lyanna Morton, Keely Blazier, Cinema Again Reviews, Villainous Smith, Sophiana Ali, The Omega Geek, Paige Pearson, Maddie Wargle, Alyssa Erdman, Anna Loskatova, Cheska Varage, Sarah Den Blekier, Evan Ball, Zachary Torres, gathering party before venturing forth, Rora Morasso, Mara Forloin, Captain Rodtastic, Lisa L, and Sarah Walsh. I do want to say, Captain Rodtastic did an amazing piece of art last week, where when we did our Music Man episode, we did a pitch where I said that Sutton Foster would have been they should have swapped roles. He did art of that, and it's pretty cool.
Oh, wow. This is how the show should have actually been.
Yeah, it really should have been. We do have some patron questions if you want to answer it really quick.
Yeah, what do we got?
Kyle Summers wrote in asking, what non-English, non-Western musical would you like to see get brought to the United States?
Oh man, I'm supposed to have an answer for that?
I don't know. I really would like to see Rebecca brought to the US one day, sincerely.
What comes to mind, Rebecca would be interesting. I would like to just see how they translate it and everything. But I mean, that Hunchback of Notre Dame thing. I mean,
I don't even know if I want it translated. I would Mozart l'Opera, opera rock.
Oh, that one was pretty good. Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would like another production of La Boheme, like a really big, gaudy production of La Boheme. I know that's opera and that's a whole different category, but I would love to see that. And for shits and giggles, Death Note the musical, fucking do it. The Grinning Man is also pretty good, I hear.
I don't know anything about that one. Definitely some stuff we've covered in other languages has been pretty good. So I don't know why they don't do that more often. That would be really nice to see. More translations. Captain
Rodtastic did compliment that question by saying, are there any foreign non-English versions of a Western musical that you think is better than their English-speaking counterparts? Once again, Notre Dame, or Glockner von Notre
Dame comes to mind immediately,
That wicked non-replica production where a TV falls out the sky and Dorothy walks out looked cool as shit.
Oh, wow.
I literally showed you this footage on podcast before, Andrew.
I'd honestly like more people to recommend us foreign stuff that's
yes,
really
please. Good. I love doing foreign
not
stuff.
Foreign stuff that's garbage. I don't want to cover We Will Rock You, but in Spanish. Please.
I would really like to do a lot of more, because what we've done in the last year, I really enjoyed doing the Magic Flute. That was a fun episode, in my opinion. I don't quite remember how well it was received, but I enjoyed watching and recording it. And Mozart l'Opera Rock was really fun and good.
We had a bit of an opera with cheese moment last year.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having another one. That was a good time.
And we do an opera month or something.
Maybe Opera October.
We're just dedicating a month to losing downloads.
Well, oh, you're not wrong.
It's gotta be January.
No one ever listens to our show in January. Our downloads go down so hard every time the new year hits. I don't know what happened. Does Christmas really depress people?
Fuck you. It's January month.
I mean, that's pretty common on YouTube too. The algorithm just, I don't know. Maybe people just don't want to do things after dealing with their families.
All right, patrons, we're gonna move on to some songs now.
All right, let's go. I love invocation and instructions for the audience. This was actually originally written for us. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Yes, but first, some do's and don'ts. Mostly don'ts. Please, don't cough. It tends to throw the actors off. Have some respect for Aristophanes, and please, don't cough. Don't say what to every line you think you haven't got. And if you're in a snit because you've missed the plot, of which I must admit there's not an awful lot, still don't say what. If you see flaws, please don't drop your jaws, please. No loud guffaws, please. When actors enter late.
When there's a pause, please. Lots of applause, please. And we'd appreciate you turning off your cell phones while we wait.
But the director at the time could not hum it in his own words to Sondheim, so he made him rewrite it. And Sondheim wrote a song called Love is in the Air, which is a little cringy, but the director could hum it. And then they performed that out of town tryouts, and that flopped, and nobody knew what the show was about. And Sondheim went to his old buddy, and he was like, "What's going on? Come on, tell me what's going on." I think it was Jerome Robbins. And he's like, "Well, you have an opening number that doesn't tell the audience what the show is about." He's like, "I wrote one already, but director didn't like it." And he says, "Well, write another one that does that the director likes." And then he wrote Comedy Tonight. I love young, sassy, angry Sondheim.
So wait, which one is this?
This was the first one. The first one he wrote that was supposed to start a funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Honestly, this one's pretty good though.
I think it's great. I really, really like it. Comedy Tonight is iconic, though.
If they use that there, they couldn't have used this for Frogs. So.
Yeah, and I think it works better in the Frogs. I really like the list. I think the rhymes in it are very, very clever, and it is Sondheim showing off. But come on,
Sondheim always shows off. I mean, that's what people want.
That's what they go to him for. We want to hear 4 rhymes in a row that are all internal that no one knows, and we want to see you work the word fart into your opening number.
Don't they almost work it into the ending number as well? I feel like they bring it back, but then they subvert it, and instead of saying fart, they say smart.
Yeah. Well, so the line here, if I remember correctly, it's "Please don't fart. There's not a lot of air, and this is art." There's a lot, and a lot of this has to do with Nathan Lane's specific delivery that I think really makes this work. I think the song is very funny, sets up the show perfectly, and really just kind of sells me on the entire vibe. Then we have other songs that I don't love as much.
So you're gonna have to just help me a little bit. What songs are new to the 2004 one?
I'd say a good majority of Act 1.
Isn't it? It's like 6 songs are new, or 7?
9.
9 songs are new.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one was always a part of it. I Love to Travel was always a part of it, and so was Heracles' song, and then we just get into the Frogs. So we get Invocation, I Love to Travel, Dress Big, and the Frogs, and that was Act 1. Like that was all the songs that were in the original.
So all of the stuff with Karen is just not there. Yeah. Okay, that makes actually a lot of sense because nothing happens like there.
He's a character, but there's not really songs.
Does he do the gag where he doesn't let the Xanthias on board
very
unless
briefly.
he answers
it's
things?
Very, very briefly. It's not as drawn out as it is in the final version.
It's probably just it feels more drawn out because then also they sing a song.
Yeah. When I hear "I love to travel," I don't know if this is just for you, but my brain goes, "I love to sing a, I love a da 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 da."
I love to travel, don't you? I love a change of pace, I love a change of space, I love to see a place that's absolutely new.
Sweat,
I love to travel,
bump,
don't you?
limp,
Of course you
wet,
do.
wet, puff, puff, drip, drip, doodle,
You know that song?
I do know that song. There's like a famous like Looney Tunes cartoon
Yeah.
with that, and also the first ever episode of South Park.
Yes. The two most important cultural lines. But every time I hear that song, like it comes in on my iPhone, I think of that. I have
That's
nothing
fair.
more to add to that, sincerely, but like I thought that was interesting.
Look, so we could talk about how the songs that are additional are not great, but we could also just talk about the frogs.
Sincerely, I do like Ariadne. I do like that number. I don't have much to say about it, but I do think it adds needed pathos and depth to Dionysus, which I'm always happy to have.
Okay,
But let's talk about the frogs.
it's like
What was that? Xanthias, wake up, Xanthias, please wake up. Old man, I need your help. I may be losing my mind, but that sounds like frogs. It is, it's frogs!
What do you think it is, mice? Well, dummy, think twice. Let's have eyes that pop. Let's have skins that glisten. Let's have feet that flop. Elephants, no listen.
I think this song's funny.
I think this song is great. I think it's staged perfectly.
It's literally like half the song is just them making these random noises, and then they have the staging is incredible with the like wire work where they're hopping, like they're jumping up in the air. Like it's very fun, especially when like most of the rest of the show they don't do anything like that. This is like the only time.
Yeah, and it's the act one closer. It does leave you wanting more. Sincerely, it is a pretty big thing to end on.
Honestly, there are some actually good visual gags
Yes.
that I think we should mention quickly. My personal favorite is Heracles' introduction. They roll in this set with this tiny house
Yeah.
on a hill, and you think it's just like, oh well, they're just there or whatever. And then Heracles actually opens up this tiny house and steps out.
That's a great gag.
I thought that was really funny because it looked like the set looks like it's supposed to be way off in the distance or something. It's very funny. And then there's the giant like fire belly frog or whatever they want to call it, that's like rolls up behind him and then grabs him with this tongue, which I thought was pretty humorous too. It's the only frog that actually looks like a frog. All the other frogs are people in a costume.
One gag I didn't mind was when we have Charon and his twin brother, where it's like, wait, you have a twin? Yeah, we were separated at birth, and I'd like to keep it that way. Like little throwaway lines like that really got a tickle out of me.
Yeah, I mean, there are some good humorous stuff in here.
Mhm. Speaking of humorous stuff, I kind of like. I really liked Hades' song. Like, I feel like we finally have an adaptation of something to do with Hades that shows how Hades actually was in the fucking Greek mythology.
Everybody dumps on Hades. People yelling, go to hell. Well, let me tell you, life in Hades is just swell. It's got flash, it's got flare, it's got spectacle to spare. People come from everywhere, like it or not.
Mostly not
Then they see what we've got,
what we've got.
and they like it a lot.
Such a lot.
Hell is hot.
It's hot, so hot.
Yeah, Hades in most cultures portrayal, because he's the king of the underworld, they often portray him as the devil, essentially. So he's always evil. Disney does this, and I think probably popularized it a lot for a lot of our generation. But in the actual mythology, he's kind of chill. He's just kind of a guy. He's not great. I mean, he does have some stories where he does some pretty shitty things.
He's more King Herod than Pilate, I think is the best way to say.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting they portrayed him this way in here.
I think the song is actually catchy. I know it was written for this. It's one of the few songs I actually feel fits the tone of this new version.
It seems like a lot of the newer songs are just for these characters that probably didn't have songs before.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But it's got the Sondheim lyrics and it's got a good hook. Okay, this is a personal thing. This is me getting angry unreasonably.
That's fair.
Do you remember My Fair Lady at all? Or even our episode on it?
Barely. I do remember that we did it.
There's a song in My Fair Lady called You Did It that I hate.
I said to him, you did it, you did it, you did it. They thought he was ecstatic and so damned aristocratic, and they never knew that you did it.
Like, unreasonably, I will admit. Where it's like, tonight, oh pal, you did it, you did it, you did it. I thought you wouldn't do it, and indeed you did. And I just think it's terrible. Stephen Sondheim basically just rewrites it and makes it about George Bernard Shaw right here.
I knew that I could do it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew they'd all poo-poo it, and indeed they did.
They took my least favorite thing, and I don't even like the fact that they connect George Bernard Shaw to My Fair Lady, the musical, because technically he didn't really have anything to do with that except for the basses, and then literally recreate one of the worst songs in My Fair Lady and just put it in this musical. I felt anger that I did not...
But you think it was intentional?
It was intentional. There's no way it wasn't.
So, but he did it. Do you believe that he did it?
Indeed, I do. This is the nitpick of all nitpicks. I just hated the fact that happened.
It is clever that they actually referenced that song, though.
No, it isn't.
It's pretty clever.
No.
You got to admit.
No, I don't have to admit shit.
You got to admit this is pretty good.
I don't have to do a goddamn thing.
Okay, but for real, though, the Shakespeare-Shaw battle, the ending song that Shakespeare does?
Yeah.
Come on. That's good.
Fear no more?
That's good shit. Fear no more? That's good shit.
Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task hast done, home art gone, and ta'en thy wages. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers, come to dust.
That's good shit, but it's also from Shakespeare's Cymbeline, which was a play that George Bernard Shaw criticized so much that he rewrote most of it. So George Bernard Shaw was beaten by a show that George Bernard Shaw had vocally discredited and said was garbage during his day so much that he rewrote it.
He does get very angry after losing to this as well.
Yeah. If you know that, it's interesting. I do find it fascinating. And this is the thing that I always find interesting. When people within the same art form comment on other artists. I know it can get very jack-offy, but I find it interesting when they criticize them. Like Sondheim and Bert Love, or did I say his name right? I want to make sure I get it right because I am cringe. Bert Sheavlove, they are criticizing George Bernard Shaw and commenting on the same art form. This is like if Lin-Manuel Miranda did an entire musical and the final scene takes place between Rodgers and Hammerstein and Rodgers and Hammerstein and what would be the contemporaries of that time? Probably fucking Jerry Herman. Like, that would be the same kind of thing happening. And I find shit like that fascinating because it says more about the artist than it does about the person they're criticizing, in all honesty.
Well, it says who they side with in the whole thing, for sure.
But art isn't a winning game, which is interesting to say that it is in this case.
Yeah, somebody does win. Although, in this case, they're just trying to win Dionysus's favor, which is I guess, interesting.
Well, he is the
weird.
god of drama and wine.
Yeah. There should have been more wine. There was a whole scene with wine, though.
Yeah. So with that, they had to defend, what is it, 3 categories: women, love, and death.
Yes. With death being the one that
Clinches it.
Shakespeare really wins because he's able to identify death from an old person and a young person's
Yes.
perspective or something like that. Which Shaw doesn't get a chance to rebut, but whatever.
I like the final scene. I like the final song, the final instructions to the audience. Once again, it's the message to take home and think about. And I think that's important.
And I like it when they talk directly to me. It's like I'm part of the show.
No, please, don't nod. Agreeing with me just 'cause I'm a god. Have some respect for Aristophanes, and please, don't nod. Don't just shrug, content to be a conscientious slug. It's fine to feel content, it's safe and snug, but soon enough contented turns to smug. Don't shovel what's uncomfortable underneath the rug. Speak up, get sore, do something more than just deplore.
I mean, sometimes I do. But then you got moments like in A Strange Loop where they make you clap along to AIDS is God's punishment, and then you realize what you're doing, and you don't know how to stop.
I like being criticized. Make me feel uncomfortable.
That is also what the Frogs is saying to you. Yeah, criticize us, boo us. At least we know that you're awake out there.
I enjoyed this show a lot more than I was expecting going in. Not because I had personal opinions about it, but because of what I had heard.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I liked it because it's the Frogs, and the Frogs deserves to be a good show.
Well, that being said, how about we get your ranking with the rest of the Stephen Sondheim tiers that you have created? And this is our first Stephen Sondheim, we haven't covered one since West Side Story, 2 Decembers ago.
Yeah, and I abbreviated everything, so now I'm going to have to remember what they mean.
All right. In A tier, you have Sweeney Todd, the Mama Rose musical, and Into the Woods. And B tier, you have Merrily We Roll Along, Sunday in the Park with George, Company, Follies, West Side Story. And C tier, you got Pacific Overtures, Assassins, and Passion. And in D tier, you have Evening Primrose. I am going to be very, very interested in where you put this.
This is like blasphemy, but I think this goes at least probably the bottom of B tier.
Okay. Above Pacific Overtures and Assassins and Passion? You sure about that one, buddy?
I think so. I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed those. I might have to rewatch Assassins. Maybe the ranking of Assassins would change if I rewatched it.
Yeah, that was very early on in our run.
Though I don't think my opinion of Pacific Overtures or Passion would change, I'm going to be honest.
Why don't you like Passion? Passion's great.
I thought it was snooze.
I think that was the critics' reaction to Passions too.
I thought I was falling asleep. Frogs at the bottom of B. I guess you maybe could put it at the top of C to make Jess feel better.
No, you don't have to do a goddamn thing to make me feel better.
I thought it was pretty good, honestly. I thought it was enjoyable.
I get it. I mean, I don't think I'd put it. See, this is where the Sondheim ranking comes. It's not because I think anything is bad. It's just that some things I like more than others. I don't think he's done absolute garbage.
I think even Evening Primrose, which is sitting alone in D tier, is still not horrendous.
It is better than most Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. But as of right now, your list goes Sweeney Todd, Mama Rose, Into the Woods, Merrily Roll Along, Sunday in the Park with George, Company, Follies, West Side Story, The Frogs, Pacific Overtures, Assassins, Passion, and at the bottom, Evening Primrose. Guess we're going to have to figure out where Saturday Night and Roadshow / Bounce are going to fit in one day.
Yeah. The only ones that I think could change on this list right now, Frogs could maybe move down if I get more time to think about it. I'm not sure. And Assassins, if I rewatched it, I think maybe go up, but I think I'd need to evaluate that.
Yeah.
But I think you should give Frogs a chance. Okay?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people they just haven't seen it, at all. I think that's what's really has gone on with this.
Or
show.
they just see Nathan Lane in a toga and they're like, oh, is that Forum? Because like a couple years before that, Nathan Lane was in a toga and sometimes anything happened on the way to the Forum, and you might just think it's the same show.
That's true.
I'm going to be very interested to see where that's going to rank in your list, to be honest. Because it is obviously the goofiest one, but also you like goofy shit.
A lot of it's going to depend on if I think it's funny. Like this show, like if I didn't think this show was funny, it probably would have been in D tier. Because it's just like, it's a comedy. It has to make you laugh, right? Like if it's not funny, it's not funny.
Agreed. Andrew, what is your overall thoughts on the Frogs and your cheese rating, though?
I think the Frogs is pretty fine. You should definitely check it out at least. Give it a chance, you know? How many people out there, and be fucking real, I want to see like a Twitter thread or something. How many people out there have completely dismissed this show without even having seen it at all? I think it's going to be a lot.
I would be very interested. But you know what? If you guys are doing Musicals with Cheese fan art, Jess and Andrew as Dionysus and the slave, come on. It's right there. I would hang that on this wall because that's a very specific reference, and that's my esoteric sense of humor. But the cheese, Andrew. What about the cheese?
I feel like I haven't ever given anything feta, although that's probably I'm going to be proven wrong by that in like a day. But
tweet at him, Juliet. Tell him he's wrong.
I've probably given it like 5 or 6 times, and I'm just like not remembering.
I'm gonna give it feta. And there's like 5 fetas in a row.
Literally.
That's good. I enjoyed the Frogs a lot more than I expected to. I was angered not by the message, but the way that I don't know, it made me feel a thing. It gave me like this fire under my ass I didn't feel before, where it just told you to stop being an apathetic piece of shit and go out and do something. And I don't know, having that kind of message really kind of messed with me. And it's still kind of something I'm unpacking right now. And part of me wishes I had like thought about this longer, because I feel like that's something we could still unpack. Because I was literally, as I was talking to you before we started, I was figuring out what I thought the message was of this show. And I wish I had jumped into that. But I know the show isn't for everyone. I don't love the humor. I don't think it works in its current form. However, update it every 10 years. It's an important message. It is an important message. Put famous people in it. Film it. Make this accessible. Make this like one of the Sondheim standards, because I think it deserves to be.
I think this would actually this would be pretty decent as a movie.
Yeah, even an animated film.
Yeah, I think it could work.
Yeah.
It's got that like adventurous kind of vibe to it, and then you could do some funny gags. The visual humor, like keep that kind of stuff. That's funny. That's fun.
And a lot of what works on stage as visual humor also translates to animation very well.
Yeah. So, there's this stuff. There's a lot you can do with this.
Mm-hmm. But my cheese rating is going to be Chipotle Gouda, because most people love Gouda and think that like that's a pretty Gouda choice. But this is a little spicy, a little harder to swallow, not as easy just to snack on. You have to ration your bites and actually understand what you're eating. Make it good for your palate. It's important to have a diversified palate, and if you don't, you're just going to be eating the same shit as everyone else, like the frogs in the fucking sea below us in the river Styx that are trying to drag you down and make you one of them.
I can't believe we're going to get roasted on Twitter for liking the frogs, but here we are.
Wow. Time to get canceled, Andrew.
If that's what gets us canceled for liking the frogs, then that's the hill that we're going to die on.
I love this show because it criticizes media analysis and the lack of it in our modern society. Even in 1974, even in 2004, it is not as bad as it is right now. But you know who isn't shit at media analysis?
Us, for sure.
And them and our wonderful patrons. Thank you guys for listening. Please follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher at Musicals with Cheese. We're on Twitter at Cheesy Musicals, Patreon Musicals with Cheese, Instagram Musicals with Cheese, YouTube page Musicals with Cheese. We have a Patreon-only podcast called Patreon with Cheese. Email us at musicaltheaterlives@gmail.com. Our keeper the cheese is Juliet Antonio. This show is edited by Andrew DeWolf, and he's doing a fucking great job lately. Aren't you enjoying the memification of this show? I think our show is better. Our themes are created by Robyn Nash of IOU Music UK. Thank you to the Broadway Podcast Network for having us on the platform and for not kicking us off for making fun of fucking Ben Brantley. We'll see you next time on Musicals with Cheese. We're the frogs, adorable frogs, not your hoity-toity intellectuals, not your hippy-dippy homosexuals, just your easygoing, simple, warm-hearted, cold-blooded frogs.